Hello, welcome to TRO Omega's Learning Academy. My name is Joan Parks Saunders, and I'm a member of the TRO Omega Chapter. I will be showing you how to make a pillowcase dress. You will need several things. First, you will need a pillowcase. You will need a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter. You will need a ruler. You will need a sewing machine. You may need pins. You will need an iron and an ironing board. The first thing I'm going to do, I would suggest that you press your pillowcase so that it is flat. I am then going to cut the top of the pillowcase, and that's where the edge is sewn together, 2.5 inches. I am going to use a rotary cutter to cut it 2.5 inches. If you wish, you can measure the 2.5 inches with the ruler and mark across with the pencil, particularly if you're going to be using scissors and you're not sure that your lines are going to be straight. You can mark it with the pencil. I'm going to use a rotary cutter, and I am going to cut 2.5 inches from the top. As you can see, with the rotary cutter, it is very quick. This is the 2.5 inches. We will use this material later to make the bindings for the armholes. After we've cut 2.5 inches from the top, you will see that the pillowcase is short. You then will fold the pillowcase in half, and now you're going to cut the armholes. You will mark 8 inches from the cut edge, and you can use your ruler again to mark those 8 inches. And then you will come in another 1.5 inches. And you will, to make it easier for you, you can simply draw a line to mark those 8 inches. And the line should be 1.5 inches from the edge of your pillowcase. You will then draw a line that meets from the edge of your pillowcase to your line. Using your scissors, you will cut the 8 inches, and when you get to where the lines intersect, you will make it into a J shape so that it will be rounded. It then should look like this. Once you have cut your pillowcase, you will then fold down the top. You will make a small fold, and this is where your ironing board comes in. So I'm going to go to my ironing board. I am going to fold under the top of the pillowcase that's been cut approximately 1/4 inch. And I am going to press that 1/4 inch seam. By pressing the 1/4 inch, you will make 2 folds, and I'm going to show you from the pressing so that you can see what I'm doing. But I'm pressing 1/4 inch, and you can guess it does not have to be perfect. And you will do that on both sides, and I will show you what it looks like. The first pressing of your 1/4 inch looks like this on the edge of your pillowcase, and it is on both edges that you've cut. You will then fold your pillowcase down approximately 1.5 inches, and again, you can guess at that if you'd like. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can pin that 1.5 inches, then take it to your iron and press it, and you will do this on both sides. Once you do that, you will have your press line. You will then press this. I'm going back to the ironing board to press. Now that you have your ends pressed, we are going to work on the binding for the arms. So I'm going to remove the pillowcase, and the top that you had cut on the pillowcase, we're now going to cut 1.5 inch strip. Again, I'm using a rotary cutter, but you can certainly cut this with scissors, and you can simply mark that 1.5 inches and cut it with scissors. And so the marking just goes straight down. And I'll cut it with scissors so you can see how that's done. Then, after you have your 1.5 inch strip, you will cut the end that's sewn together. Now you have one long strip. I'm going to go to my iron and make my binding. What I do to make the binding easy is I use a pin at the end of the fabric to pin it, and I fold it in half, and I'm going to show you this so you can see what I'm doing. What I've done is I've folded the ends so that they meet in the center, and I use a pin to hold them on the ironing board as I press the complete strip. Once you have completed ironing, creating the binding, you're going to fold it in half and you're going to press it together. Now we are ready to make the binding. You will make the binding from the top that you cut on the pillowcase. You will cut 1.5 inches, and you can cut that with scissors or with a rotary cutter. You now have a 1.5 wide strip. Because it's a pillowcase, you will cut the end so that you have one long strip. Now, to make the binding, you will take that 1.5 strip and you will fold it in about 1/4 of an inch on both sides, such that the two sides touch, almost touch. You will then press that with your iron all the way the length of the strip. Once you have that press, you will make a second press. You will fold that onto itself and you will press it all the way down. You will then have one long strip, approximately 40 to 42 inches long. You will cut that in half and you have the binding for each armhole. After you finish your binding, it will look like this. You would have had the open center that you ironed together from your 1.5 inch strip. You would have then folded it together. It makes your binding. If you would prefer, you can certainly buy binding that coordinates with your pillowcase. I choose to make it simply because then I can perfectly match the pillowcase, or I can, if I choose, do a contrast. This is a dress in which we've done a contrast binding. This is a dress in which we have done the same binding. Once you have your binding, you're ready to go to the sewing machine. What you will do next is cut your binding in half. If you're buying binding, you're going to need about 44 inches of binding. That's usually a package of binding. And you're going to cut that in half. It gives you about 2 20-inch strips for each arm. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine. Now that you've completed your binding, you will notice that your 1/4 inch, your ironing mark, and now I'm going to grab the binding. If you can sew your binding onto your pillowcase dress without pinning, which is what I usually do. If you are uncomfortable with doing that, you can put a pin in, but make sure when you're sewing on your sewing machine that you do not sew over the needle. If you sew over the needle, it may break the needle in the sewing machine. So I'm going to take the pin out. I am going to raise my pressure foot. I am going to put the pillowcase dress with the binding, and as you can see, I have the dress in the center crease, and then I fold the binding over. I am going to put my sewing machine foot down. I put 1 stitch into the fabric, and I am going to start to sew. You will sew close to the edge so that you catch the pillowcase and the binding on both sides. Your foot is usually, you will have a 1/4 inch in the center, depending on your machine, and I just put my foot on the edge of the binding and sew. you will use a thread that coordinates with your pillowcase. If you like, you could use contrasting thread. When you go around the curve, if you're not comfortable in sewing, you might want to go a little bit slower to make sure that you catch the curve of the armhole. As you can see, I've completed placing the binding on the pillowcase, and you have binding on both sides connected, so you have one completed armhole. You will then do the same for your second armhole. You may have some excess fabric up at the top, and you can clip that such that it's even. Now what you will do with your pillowcase dress is you will simply turn it down on your iron marks. As you turn it down on your iron marks, you will sew, and I'm not going to sew this one completely because I haven't put the binding on both sides. Before you do this part, you will put the binding on the second armhole. Once you've done that, your pillowcase dress will look like this. You will have stitched down the back, and you will stitch it on the top, and you will create a loop, and this is where the ribbon will go. You will then simply take I use a safety pin to send mine through, but you can use any device that makes it easy for you to thread through. The length of the ribbon that you should cut should be 2 36-inch length, 2 36-inch length of ribbon. The type ribbon that you should get is called Grogan ribbon. You get this type ribbon, it has small ridges in it because it does not ravel as much. This is a satin ribbon, and this is smooth. You certainly can use that, but you will have to sew the edge such that it doesn't ravel. But what we're going to do now is we're simply going to take our safety pin that's attached to one end of the ribbon, and we're going to open the channel we've created and simply thread the safety pin through. Once you have completed both front and back, you will have completed your pillowcase dress. So what we're going to do, I'm just doing one side so you can see, and I will show you a completed pillowcase dress. As you see, it comes through the end with the safety pin on it. You have your 36 inches. So now, once you thread both ends of your pillowcase dress, you have now completed a pillowcase dress. Thank you very much for listening to this class today. We appreciate all the help you can give us. We look forward to working and sewing. Thank you.